My dear Bagginses and Buffins.
By the blood of our people, are your lands kept safe?
I see in your eyes the same fear that will take the heart of me.
So do all who live to see such times.
By all that you hold dear, this good earth.
There's some good in this world, and it's worth fighting.
Welcome back, everyone. I said we'd be back, and we are. We've got a lot of cool stuff coming your way. But right now, I wanted to do a quick little quiz, if you will, about James Bond. I know I've been on a bit of a James Bond kick. There has been a lot of press about James Bond recently, who's going to play him. But this is one that I'm hoping will get some interesting comments down below. 10 things no James Bond fan can agree on. So let's start off with number one. Is James Bond just a code name? And I guess, do you want to take this away? Do you want me to say my?
Oh no, you go ahead first.
So I think it depends on how you view James Bond. If you're going from the novels, it does seem like it's a name. It's not 100% clear that it's a name, but he does use it outside of official operations and capacity. So it does seem like it is his name, at least his official legal name in England. However, in the films, at least in the past, in some of the older films, they have hinted at it being a code name.
And there's like a new James Bond is just a new guy with a code.
Right. Well, and the same way that there's other people in the industry
also-
have code names.
They also have hints that they're the same person.
True. So that's the problem with the films.
Because doesn't, like, I'm just thinking of the Pierce Brosnan one when I can't even remember the exact line, but tomorrow never dies. So it's a family motto, and that goes back to On Her Majesty's Secret Service when that was his like heraldic family motto. And
Yeah.
different guys. Maybe Brosnan and Lazenby are the same, but everyone else is code.
Well, and yeah, and that's the thing is, like, did some of them? You're right. Some of them seem to have happened in the past, and in the novels too. There are references to some earlier works, but not all. So it's not clear in the movies if it is all the same guy or if just parts of it are the same guy, especially when you get into Roger Moore's stuff. But hold your horses. We're going to come to that. So from my personal take on this, the films, I'm fine if it is just a code name. I think it's okay to have it be a code name for the films. I don't think it takes away from anything. But in the books, I don't believe it was supposed to be a code name. And it just, because the films have progressed and have been such a staple in our culture, and they've gone through so many actors, that it's kind of okay to kind of do a wink and a nod and say it's just a code name. Especially if you're going to reboot the franchise anyway, since we know what happened at the end of Daniel Craig's tenure. Spoilers, I guess. Spoilers, like, turn it off now. James Bond dies. So if there is another James Bond, it's definitely a code name.
Unless we just go earlier in the timeline.
Right, exactly. So maybe that happens in the future, and all the rest are in between somehow. You're right. So, like, that's the thing. It's unclear. I don't care in the movies. In the books, it's not a code name. Although I do believe some people are writing some new books about James Bond. Like, they've been given the green light too, and maybe they will change it to be a code name. I don't know. But yeah, let's go on to the next one here. Now, this is gonna be maybe controversial. Maybe, I don't think my take's controversial on
When Roger Moore's movie started going bad?
Yeah. So yeah, for me,
Moonraker.
well, for me, it's for sure when he dresses up like a clown. 100% clown is not James Bond. I know James Bond disguises
I don't
himself.
know. I really like that one with. I think it was the last Roger Moore one, and wasn't Christopher Walken the villain?
Yeah.
That was a great movie.
So, well, that's the thing is, like, is can you have a good final movie, final send off, but have a bunch of bad movies and say, hey, his wasn't a great tenure starting from this point. Um, I, so I don't hate Moonraker. It is nothing like the novel, but I don't hate it as much as some people, I guess, do. I mean, Octopussy is just a terrible name, and it's super on the nose. Like, it's almost trying to be a parody name. I don't know. It's kind of weird. But even in the books, they have names like this. They have these super jokey names. So like, it's hard to say exactly when it's too much. But for me, it's when he's a clown. I forget which one that is. I can't stand that. I hate that so much. James Bond would never do that. So that's not James Bond to me.
Whether a female actor should play James Bond.
We're about to get a lot of comments on this one.
I don't know if we get canceled or not.
Yes, I think they can, especially because I think in the movies it's a code name, and I actually thought, I forget her name.
I'm not sure I want to see it though.
Well, really? Okay, interesting hot take there. All right, but hear me out. The actress that played, I forget the character's name, but in the last James Bond, she was like another agent.
I think it's such a bad idea. Like, this is not like the target audience has always been like kind of slightly misogynistic appeal to like men. Not too bad, but
like, from a business standpoint,
this is like, this show is made for men. It is like, you can't.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to insult a woman watching it who likes it. That's actually great, but I think proportionally more men are gonna like this than women, and I think I'm more likely to relate to a male character.
I understand that completely.
So what's this gonna? Unless they make her a lesbian, then we still need the Bond girls.
True. I'm fine with that. I mean, heck, Daniel Craig's James Bond had hinted that he was bisexual, so and no one seemed to care about that. Maybe they did. Let me know in the comments down below if you cared about that, and if you don't know what I'm referring to, I don't know if you're actually a true James Bond fan or not, and you're just someone who's angry. I agree with everything you said, but that's from like a business perspective on just whether or not there can be a female spy.
I mean, there can be.
I'm fine with that, but I see your point. The James Bond name and style has always had a touch of misogyny, and in the books, racism, but they kind of left that out of the movies. And so I see where you're coming from. Like, who is gonna watch? I would watch it. I would actually go and watch it. But you're right. There's gonna be, if they change it to a degree where you lose a lot of the elements, you're now just kind of a standard spy movie, right? You're missing the key pieces that make it James Bond and not Mission Impossible or something like that.
Yeah.
I will say, I think like I said, the character that was his help on one of the missions in the last movie, I think she did a great job at being like a 000 agent, and it would be fun to see something like that. Maybe you don't have it be James Bond. Maybe you just have it be set in the James Bond universe. Maybe that helps it a little bit.
And it wouldn't be like, James is not a unisex name, so it wouldn't even be James Bond.
No, it would be Jane.
Jane Bond?
Yeah.
That just sounds cheesy, to be honest.
I mean, so I mean, sure, but so does the name James Bond until you watch the movies and get sucked in and start feeling for this character. But you're right. It would definitely be, and especially in the current climate, the current film climate, I don't think now's the time for a female Bond, just because of all the rhetoric that's happening right now. If you just sneak this in during a year where no one's freaking out about all the Marvel characters being women, I think you might be okay. But I agree. You know what? I can see your point, and it'll probably fail at least right now if they just go Jane Bond and basically try to do a James Bond but female, but take out a lot of what makes it kind of fun and why you go see James Bond over another spy movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and we're not even
Or
talking about
do,
race
do
either.
one do one where he goes undercover as a woman and
Oh,
something like
jeez.
that.
Uh, okay, the whole movie is a woman actor, and then at the very end, take off the mask, and it's Daniel Craig or Pierce Brosnan. Um, okay, oh wow, what would that mean? Okay, that would be fun though. All right.
Was Die Another Day's Invisible Car really so bad? No, it was fine. I didn't care. I thought that was cool.
I thought it was cool too, and especially nowadays, it's almost becoming reality. Um, with some of the other movies that we're seeing, like people are fine with this kind of tech. Uh, I think people were upset at it for no reason. Like they just were like, "Oh, this is too much tech." Uh, have you seen some of the tech? I mean, I know it's outdated, but if you look back at some of these other movies, some of the tech that they've got going on is kind of crazy too.
Well, I think the problem, what was going on here is that I think the Bourne movies were coming out at the same time, and they're drawing a lot of comparison to the Matt Damon Bourne trilogy, which was, I don't know, it didn't have gadgets like this.
Right. So that one was more grounded in reality. It was
Yeah.
kind of hit harder, and this was leaning into the sci-fi realm in a
Yeah.
way. Okay, I can see that, but in the end, it wasn't that big of a deal. It's not even clear.
20 years later, when we're not making that comparison anymore, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and to me, it's not even like the tech stuff is just supposed to be kind of fun. At least from my perspective, you're not supposed to look at the tech stuff and be like, "Oh, this is unrealistic, therefore James Bond sucks." That's the fun of it. Like it's like they added this stuff in the movies. It's not that prevalent in the books, and this is just supposed to be like a fun visual to try to keep you going on this sometimes rather boring outing for James Bond. They kind of throw these gadgets in to kind of help visually energize the audience. But I've always liked it, so I never understood people's being upset. But I take your point that they're comparing it to other projects that were maybe at that time we were kind of going into a more of a hyper realism mode, which Bond doesn't really fit in that.
Yeah. Is it 007 the number or 007?
It's 007 the number.
Yeah, I've never thought it was literally two O's, but I guess this is a discussion.
I don't it's but what it's the number 7, but they're part of the 00 program, but nobody writes it 00-7.
Yeah.
It's 007. The movies say 007. The books say 007, I think.
I think the books do. Yeah.
Like it's people say 00, but it's when you write that out, it looks like 007. It doesn't ultimately matter. It's called the 00 program. But I don't know if they're actually saying it's. I'm not saying it's 007, as in like that's what they write all the time. Some people probably write O's and they just know it's the 00 program, agent number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was George Lazenby a brilliant or terrible?
Oh man. Okay, I think you and I will disagree on this. I think it was terrible.
I don't think he was terrible.
So I think it was almost unwatchably bad.
No, he's okay. He's not like he's not like he's probably the worst Bond, but I think they're all good in a way.
Okay, so let me I'll say my stuff and then you counter it because I think that'll be interesting. So like for me, he seems less confident and less sure of himself. He's not great with women, it seems, and he it's not cluelessness, but all the Bonds go through a struggle where they have to figure out what's happening, and so they are in the dark. When he was in the dark, it seemed to impact him more, and so he almost came off as slightly incompetent. Now, I don't know if this was the direction, the writing, or the acting, so I don't want to put it on George himself, but just the style that film portrayed for me made me think less of James Bond. So that's why I think it was bad. Now you go. You explain the
Well,
fun.
I think he's like playing a dorky professor, and
True.
and he's still picking up all these women because he can't help it. And it was funny, and I mean I don't know, I didn't have a bad vibe. I mean I don't think I remember it well enough to go too in depth, but
That's
I
fair.
think
I will say you're right. His backstory was a dorky professor. So maybe it's hard to make that cool. I will say Indiana Jones makes it cool. Um, that all the students in Dr. Jones's class are in love with him,
yeah.
and he plays it still pretty suave.
And I mean the costumes in this one were outrageous. And
True.
I
It does,
heard
George doesn't
I
have much to work with in that department.
I heard I mean I don't even know where I heard it. And maybe it was like a bonus disc or some other YouTube channel, but like something about he didn't get along well with the people in the costume department. Like he's a bit of an arrogant prick, the actor himself,
Oh, okay.
and they were kind of messing with him, the costume department. They were giving him like really stupid things to wear, just to kind of like mess with him.
That's funny.
So I don't know. Maybe he was one of the harder ones to work with in terms of his like personality as well. That's what I've heard, but I mean I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There's a lot of stuff going against Lazenby, so it's kind of hard to like. It's kind of hard to just judge that Bond by itself when we don't really like. Let's see him do other things before we judge, because like being this nerdy professor, being on a isolated with a bunch of women where he's accidentally picking them up and not even wanting to, like wearing these ridiculous get-ups that Bond might wear if required, but wouldn't pack it on its own. So yeah, I don't know. All in all, I think for me it's just the tone of the film made me like question like what's wrong with James Bond in a way that I don't normally question. I mean, I've talked about Roger Moore and how I hated some of that choices, but that was more they were going too silly. At least he was still trying to be James Bond, whereas this was almost a different character, and it's such a stark contrast between Sean Connery. I can see why maybe they wanted to do that because it's hard to follow Sean Connery. They almost needed this as a buffer to be like, okay, we're done with Sean, we're going on, but then they weren't done with Sean, were they? So
Yeah.
Yeah. So let us know down below, Lazenby, brilliant or terrible? I'd love to hear from people because this one is difficult for me.